Okay. So welcome everyone to this workshop he entitled it Cultivating Expansion. So just to give you my 2 sentences on Justin, he's a transformational coach who really has a global coaching practice. He's in Dubai now. He says it's hotter there than here. I'm in New York. And he's helped really numerous business leaders and individual creators achieve more fulfillment and freedom in their lives. I mean, that kind of summarizes how I think of Justin. So, Justin, why don't you take over from here?
Great,
Thank
thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you, Jonathan, for hosting this space. And it's great to be here with you all. So I know quite a few of you, but there's a lot of new faces. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and kind of tell you about me and my journey and what led me to the work I do. So I'm somebody that's been self-employed my entire career. I started my first business after grad school, which was a branding agency. And that business evolved into focusing on colleges and schools and see higher ed mostly. So I ran that business for about 13 years, did very, very well. I scaled it up to 7 figures. But about halfway into my journey and, halfway, to like that work and, running that business, I just reached a place where I wasn't happy. And what I was doing really wasn't bringing me fulfillment and joy anymore. And the best way that I can describe it is every day I would wake up with this heavy energy, this almost, dread about having to face the day. So I went through a period of burnout and, reaching that place, I knew that I was destined for something more. I was destined for something with deeper meaning and purpose, but I just didn't know where to turn or what to do. And that's when my first coach showed up. And I started working with my coach. And what was really cool was his journey in life was so aligned with mine. He had a design firm on the West Coast that he ran for about 20 years, ended up going through something similar, burning himself out, and he became a coach. And it was really called to work with this person. Something in me, very strongly just felt, do this, work with this person. So I signed up for his program and I went up to Santa Fe and started a 3-day workshop and I began, his work. And that journey just changed my life. It just completely changed my life. It was the beginning of a spiritual waking up and really me returning to my essence. And at the root of it, it gave me the courage to untether my identity from that business I created that wasn't bringing me joy anymore and really return to the place of being and my soul's truth. And, over the next couple of years working with my coach, I felt the calling to this work as well. And along the journey, I learned some really powerful lessons. And I learned that we're always best positioned to help who we once were. And I learned that our journey in life is our lesson, and our lesson is our message. It's the thing that we're meant to teach others. So late 2019, early 2020, COVID hit, the world changed. And I said, I've really got to do this. I've really got to follow where my soul is calling me. So I went through my trainings and certifications as a coach and started my practice. And I leaned into those lessons I learned about helping people, helping who we were. And what I started my practice with was helping others like I was, people that are the picture of success on the outside, but feeling unfulfilled within, helping them navigate the journey I traveled. And, through my own personal development work, through working with so many amazing coaches, teachers, spiritual guides, I've really learned a lot, and I've really become, such a more powerful version of myself than I was before this journey began. And my goal with this workshop today was to bring some of those lessons, those powerful lessons that I learned on my journey, and share them with you here today. So what we're going to talk about today is a few things. The common thread, the common theme running through this workshop today is energy, and expansive energy. Because at our core, that's what we are. We are energetic beings. So what we're going to start with today is looking at what is energy and how does energy impact our state of being. Then we're going to look at using our energetic response in situations to help guide us in business and life. We're also going to look at connecting and creating from the wisdom of your higher self. And we're going to look at the paradoxical power of detachment and how letting go can help things flow. And then we're going to look at how do we create a vision from that energy of detachment that creates forward momentum and inspired action. And lastly, what we're going to do is close out by looking at how do we create our own luck. And we'll learn that there really isn't a secret to it, but it's the way we show up, and it lies in our being. So during the workshop, there's going to be a few breakout rooms as well, where we'll go into separate rooms of about 3 people, and kind of talk about the concepts that we're learning and how they're showing up in your life, and what you've learned from your journey as well. So I have some slides I prepared that can kind of help to go through some of these concepts. So let me begin with that. Okay. And just a thumbs up if everyone can see the screen. Cool. All right, perfect. So yeah, so what we're going to begin with is looking at our states of being and looking at the human experience. So one way that I like to, show this on kind of like a visual level, so to speak, is 2 axes. The first axis being our state of being. The second being what's called our doing. Now, I like to call these our soul line and our goal line. So in this human experience, there's our being and our doing. So our doing, we can, that shows up in our work, our careers, what we do on a daily basis. But our being is who we are at our essence. That lies at our soul's truth. It's our way of showing up in it. So one other way to view this axis of being at the highest level is what's called our higher self. And on the lower levels is our ego self. Now, our higher self is the highest, most empowered, embodied version of our essence. It's who we are at our best. Our higher self is ultimately our connection to source. Now, our ego self, now the word ego, when most people see ego, they think of, having a big ego, like, oh, look at me. But ego is actually more the human self. It's the mind, that, mental self versus our spiritual self. So on the axis of doing, when we think of forward momentum, it's growth. It's moving forward. It's moving forward in our business, in our life, in our goals, what we want to create. On the other side of the axis of doing is stagnation. It's when we're not really doing anything, when we're just kind of, sitting still. Now, when we look at energy, on these lower levels, if we're operating in that place, it's what's called contraction. We're in a state of contracted energy, and this is lower level frequencies. On the higher levels, we're in what's called a state of expansion. These are higher frequencies. And when we think of frequencies, we're going to get into this a little bit forward, but we're always vibrating at a certain frequency based on our being. Let me just check the chat real quick.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
Justin, do you want to take any questions along the way?
Oh, I see. Are the slides moving? I only see the title page.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry about that. All right, they are indeed moving. It looks like I'm the only one that can see them. So let me try this again. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can see it moving now. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Justin.
So, yeah, thanks for letting me know. So, what I was going through was, we have the axis of being and the axis of doing, and how those are, referred to as your soul line and your goal line, and then your higher self and your ego self, and growth and stagnation. So the contraction is, those lower level frequencies, and contraction is kind of when we feel like nothing's quite going right, when we feel we're in a state of scarcity, fear, and we're not showing up at our best self. It's the state of lack, and you can see that's in the realm of when we're in a state of stagnation and we're kind of trapped in our head in the ego self. But expansion is when we're connected with our higher self, when we're moving forward, in our goals. Now, one thing to point out here, this is showing the axis of being and doing, and there's a important point regarding fulfillment. When most people say they're unfulfilled, and certainly in my experience, what I learned was that fulfillment is the byproduct of when our doing is in alignment with our being. So when what we do is not in alignment with who we are at our essence in here, we're not fulfilled. But when what we do, our work, how we're showing up in the world, what we're doing for fun, when those things are a reflection of our essence and our truth, fulfillment naturally emerges. It's a byproduct of these two axes being in alignment. And that's the domain of expansion, of expansive energy. So one other way to look at this in a little bit more depth, in the slides forward, we'll look at energy in more depth as well, is how expansion and contraction tend to manifest and show up. And they typically show up in mindsets and ways of being. And I wanted to share this with you because it can be helpful to start to build awareness. Because growth ultimately begins with awareness. When we're aware of the energy we're operating from, when we're aware of our energetic state, we begin to have the power to shift that. But the only way we can shift it is when we're self-aware of it. So like we talked about, the domain of contraction is kind of the domain of the ego self. And the domain of expansion is the higher self. It's our connection to source. So when we're in contraction, there's like a bunch of different, I kind of like to call them variables, that they're all the same energy, but they tend to manifest and show up a little bit differently. And it's the same with our higher self. And you'll see that these ways of showing up and ways of being, translate to the higher self. They rise up, as we grow and as we raise our, vibrational energetic state. So the first one is scarcity. So scarcity is, a lower level state where we just believe there's not enough. There's not enough to go around. There's not enough money. There's not enough, clients. There's not enough, time in a day. There's, not enough sunshine. I mean, so many things. But when we step into the higher self, scarcity transcends to an abundance mindset. Now, the difference of abundance to scarcity is abundance is a way of being where we intrinsically know there's more than enough. There's more than enough clients in the world. There's more than enough money, because money is energy. The difference between scarcity and abundance with money is our relationship to it. When we're lacking money, we're not showing up to money, effectively. When we're operating from a place of abundance, we're accepting. We believe that there's more than enough around. And that's when we start to attract it. Because the thing here is, what we focus on, we attract more of. If we're in a state of scarcity and all we focus is, oh God, I don't have enough clients, I don't have enough money, when we just continually focus on that, we're going to get more of that. But when we're in a state of abundance and we surrender and realize that there's more than enough, we start to attract that. And abundance, in that way of being, there's no competition, because there's more than enough clients for everybody, and everybody has a unique gift and voice to share. So another one in these realms of contraction, that a lot of people tend to fall in, is what's called victim mindset. Now, victim mindset is when we believe things are happening to us, when we believe that things are beyond our control. Maybe like a client didn't pay, or something happened to me. It's placing blame outside of ourselves. It's always outward facing, feeling we're the victim. Things are happening to us. It's a very reactive way of being and showing up. But the victim transcends to the creator. And I like using the word creator, because it's really about creating your own circumstances. So a powerful question I always like to ask when people are in this victim mindset mode is, well, given that's the situation, what would you like to create? Because victim is reactive, creator is proactive. So anytime that there's a struggle, the best way to transcend out of victim mindset is to ask yourself, well, what can I create? What can I change? What in my situation can I do differently? How can I be creative? And then fear, of course. Fear is really, one of the common threads running through all of these energies. And even if we look at scarcity mindset, victim mindset, they're often related in fear. Fear of what could happen, fear of what could go wrong. But what if we were to let go of that fear and trust, trust that things are always working out. Trust that I'm exactly where I need to be. Trust that the universe has my back. Look back at your own journey and look, how have things always worked out? And then there's the self-critic. So the self-critic is the voice that's always kind of talking in the back of our head, like, oh, you should have done that differently. You should have, said this. You shouldn't have done that. Learning to tame the voice of the self-critic is key. And the self-critic transcends to self-love, that voice of inner compassion. And then resistance. So resistance shows up when things just don't seem to quite be going as well as they could. When we might be working on a project and it seems forced, where, we might be trying to launch a new venture and something just doesn't quite seem to be going right. And most of the time that's a question of alignment. Something's not quite aligned. And that transcends to flow. The flow state is where everything is just working. You're in your zone of genius. You're operating from a place of alignment, doing what you do best. So one other way to look at this, and one thing that I came across like a few years back were these really amazing teachers by somebody called Dr. David Hawkins. And David Hawkins was a really cool guy. He's, was a, spiritual teacher, but also a scientist. And what's fascinating was he took this concept of, contraction and, expansion, and he brought a scientific view to it. And he actually kind of codified this in terms of levels of consciousness and the energetic states that go with it. So these are the levels of consciousness that he came up with. And you'll see on the lowest levels, we have things such as shame and guilt, apathy, grief, and fear. At the highest levels, we have love, joy, peace, and at the very highest, a state of enlightenment. And what goes along with this, these are kind of the feelings, so to speak, that go along with each level of consciousness, each vibrational state. So like, guilt is, this, showing up vindictively. Anger, we're vengeful. Courage, we begin to allow, we start to permit things to happen. Reason, that's the seat of wisdom. And you'll notice at the top, enlightenment is self. When we realize we are one, we're connected to source. So what he did was he scientifically proved how each of these has a unique frequency on a logarithmic scale. And what you'll notice is that the 200 level, the level of courage, is where things shift, from this kind of downward pull to this upward pull. In that level of courage, that, showing up with courage, permitting, beginning to allow, that's the place where contraction shifts into expansion. So there's a couple other layers that I like to put on this myself. And one is, showing how this is ultimately the continuum of a state of separateness up to a state of oneness. Now, what this means is when we're in a state of contraction, we're in a dualistic state. So what that means is everything is separate from us. So, if we feel there's not enough money, if there's not enough clients, we feel those clients are separate from us. They're over there. We have to get those clients. But when we're in a state of oneness, we realize that our clients are actually a mirror of us. Our clients are us. And when we show up from a place of energetic expansion, show up in our truth, show up as we truly are, those clients will resonate with us. Those clients will begin to show up. I mean, I've seen this time and time again in my life where, showing up in that state of expansion, showing up from a place of abundance, clients just show up from the weirdest places. Things just begin to happen. We step into a state of flow. And the other layer on this is levels of consciousness. So when we're in contraction, those levels of pride and grief and fear, that's a very physical state. So it's what's called 3D consciousness. So 3D consciousness is basically when we're, just in that human, worldly, earthly realm. And we can't get out of that. We can't get beyond that. We're not even thinking about, what could I create? How can I connect to my higher self? How can I, what else? What if? We're just trapped in that, those lower level energies. We're kind of trapped in our mind, so to speak. But when we begin to grow and begin to wake up, we step into that 4D consciousness where we start to see, there's more beyond us. We're connected to something. We're capable of incredible things, we start to see. And it really begins by stepping into that seat of courage. And when we're in these energies, these lower expansive energies, that's where we kind of have a foot in both worlds. We have a foot in the human world and a foot in the spiritual world. And then at the highest level is source. It's what they call 5D consciousness. And enlightenment is complete connection with source, complete oneness, complete unification. And what's fascinating about this too is, humankind is evolving its consciousness. Humankind is slowly climbing up this energetic scale. And everything has a calibration to this as well. Situations have a calibration to this. Events have a calibration to this. People obviously have a calibration to this. You might, encounter someone, have a conversation with someone where you just feel expansive, where you feel like your, energy is rising. That's because their energy is expansive and you're experiencing that. But equally, you might be around someone sometimes who you feel kind of like, oof, and that's what you're feeling. You're responding to someone's energy. So kind of the bottom line here is, the message that I really want to share is, it's so easy to think about us, on a day-to-day basis as human beings, which we are, obviously, we're human beings. But it's easy to think of us as human beings having a spiritual experience, when in reality, what we really are spiritual beings that are having a human experience. And when you think about that, it puts everything in perspective. Because each and every one of us at our essence is a spiritual being. Each and every one of us is part of Source. And if each and every one of us is part of Source, what we are capable is incredible. We're capable of incredible potential, incredible creativity, incredible things that we can bring into this world. Each and every one of us is a vessel of that creation, a vessel of Source. It's powerful stuff. So to kind of, bring this together a bit too, and move forward, thinking about this, thoughts are the language of the mind, but feelings are the language of the soul. So think about that for a minute. So thoughts, when we think of things, our mind might be going, like 1,000,000 miles an hour, monkey mind going on, trapped in there, so much going on. That's our mind. That's our ego state, just going over and over things constantly. But feelings, those things we feel that are beyond words, those things we feel that we know to be true, those things like, when we're thinking something, we get chills. Those feelings, that's the language of the soul. That's our higher self communicating to us. And feelings ultimately are energy. And energy is your guide. So when you think about that, it's like, well, okay, but how do I use energy as my guide? What does that mean? What does that look like? So a powerful place to start is when you're making decisions, whether it be in your business, whether it be taking on a new client, maybe a new opportunity that's coming your way, or even, if a friend calls and says, oh, is this something you'd like to do this weekend? Pause in that moment and check in with yourself, and try to step outside of your mind, because here's the thing, our mind will often say, oh, yes, okay, that's going to be, a lot of money if I take that client on. Or, oh, Sally called, I haven't seen her in a while, I should go. I feel bad. That's the mind. But pause in those moments and check in with how you genuinely feel in your body. How do you feel? Does that, opportunity that presented itself feel expansive, or does it feel contractive? Does it feel light, or does it feel heavy? Because that's your answer. And, do you feel expansive or contractive? Anytime something like that comes up, and I've seen this so many times in my life, especially with my old business where, we would get, clients calling, or, some sort of project might come up, it was a lot of money, but it just felt so heavy. I was like, oh God, that just doesn't feel aligned. And, sometimes we would take those projects on, and then it just drained me so much. The cost of it wasn't worth it. This was before I kind of did all this work and learned all this stuff. But, with time, I started to recognize that. I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel right. And then I'd sit with that and I'd spend some time with that, and I kind of turn it around and look at it from different perspectives. So why doesn't it feel right? What's not aligned about this situation for me? So with time and with practice, this becomes a deeply intuitive thing where you'll learn to trust that. You'll learn to trust that inner voice and what you feel. And you'll start to make conscious decisions from this place. And it's a powerful place to operate, because it's a place of alignment and truth. So what I'd like to do now, Jonathan, if we can go into breakout rooms. So with 3 people in each breakout room. And in the breakout room, what I'd like to do is, think about this, and talk about, has there been a time that you can think of in your work, in your personal life, whatever you want to share, about when something felt contractive, something didn't quite feel right, but you went ahead with it anyways. And what happened? What did you learn from that situation? And conversely, talk about, is there a time where you felt that and you went with your feeling, when something just didn't quite feel aligned, and you trusted that inner voice? And what happened from that? What happened from that decision of saying no?
Okay.
And yes, then we'll come back in 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay. Do you want to should you unshare, or I don't think it matters. Let's see. Okay. Here we go.
Hello again. Hello again.
I guess we left quickly.
That's funny.
I guess we'll all be in the room together in a few minutes, unless
Right?
we're in a time warp, right?
I know we jumped to a different room. Who would have known?
I'm
ready.
reading Mrs. Peregrine and the Peculiar Children, and it's all about a
I
time.
love that. Saw the movie.
I haven't seen that, but
Jay, I had an Afghan hound that I named Africa, so I thought that was really cool that your cat's Africa.
He's a calico Siamese
Love it.
and just has all the colors, and it's apparently a very rare Siamese cat.
Love
And I named her Africa, and she is just loud, and you will know her anywhere.
Love it.
Okay. Wonderful breakout. Okay, Justin. Okay, everyone, please mute again. I know it's hard. These breakouts are never long enough.
So, Jonathan, quick question. How much time do we have left?
So we have a little more. We have 34 minutes.
34 minutes. Cool. Okay. Yes. Yeah, so quickly, in like 30 seconds, is there anybody that would like to share anything from the breakout rooms?
I mean, yes, thank you, Shia.
I say that wasn't a coincidence. It's not, you know, Kevin is from Canada and I used to live in Canada. I followed my intuition and spirit. So everything he was talking about, I know. And lovely Selma from Iran, and I understand her. And I've done some energy work with another really good friend. So it's just not a coincidence that we're all together. Instinct.
Thank you. Matt?
I think 3 takeaways, very brief. One is relationships are complex. Number 2, especially when that comes to families and family dynamics. And 3, sometimes you do need to just constrict, focus in on what you need out of a given situation, and then you can expand. And that's where we landed. There was a lot more, and we did get run out of time, Jonathan, but that's a sign of a good breakout room.
Yes, it is.
Cool. All right. Yeah, thank you for sharing. All right, so we'll get back into it now. So what we'll look at now is our higher self, and connecting to our higher self, and creating from that place as well. And what I'm going to do is share a few tips and practices to help you, start to build that connection with your higher self, and start to create from that place. So let me share the screen. Okay. So like we talked about earlier, our higher self, that's that seed of, expansive energy. Our higher self is ultimately pure consciousness. And it's our connection to source. And it's the gateway to creation, I'll always like to say. So I'd encourage you to get into a relationship with your higher self. Start to connect with yourself. Start to literally talk to your higher self. You'll be amazed what comes through. So when you think about connecting with your higher self, talking to your higher self, I mean, it might sound kind of woo-woo, might sound a little out there. Like, how do I do that? Where would I even begin? I've never done this before. Well, it's actually a lot easier than you'd think. And the very first step is to become fully present in the moment. Fully present. To slow down. And in terms of being present, there's a lot of different things you can do. One thing that you can do is breathing exercises, slowing the mind down. When we slow our breath, we steady the mind. breathing is intimately related to our mind and how fast our mind is going, how we're kind of jumping all over the place with things. And you'll notice when you're in that state of, kind of being all over the place, feeling anxious, you're breathing, on kind of the higher levels of your body, meaning you're not really taking deep breaths. So when you slow down and really become conscious of the way you're breathing, and breathe from your belly, that's the first place to begin. So you really want to be, somewhere really quiet, really present. And, just become centered, take about 5-10 minutes and really be with the breath, really slow down. And the next thing to do is to connect. So one of the ways that I'd like to do this, and one of the easiest ways to start to connect with your higher self is through writing and journaling. And literally sit down and start to write. And if you've never done this before, what I'd encourage you to do is, get a journal that you really like, something, visually, really nice, good quality that you'll enjoy writing in. And if you've never journaled with your higher self before, what I'd encourage you to do is just start to write. Just start to write, like as simple as, here I am, I'm writing in the journal, let's see what comes up. And then what I'd encourage you to do is just try to set your mind aside and let things flow. Let things flow, see what comes through. Because that's the thing here is, connecting with your higher self. The best way that I can describe and explain it is setting your mind aside and really connecting to that voice, really connecting to that place. Because when the logical mind is in there, it's going to start to think of things, think of thoughts, and it's going to analyze. But when you're connected to your higher self, it's pure flow. So then it's about receiving. And what I mean by that is seeing what comes through in this context of journaling. One other way that you can do this, and when I started this work and started to talk with my higher self, here's one thing that I did that worked really well is to literally have a dialogue with your higher self. And you can do this with, two separate colored pens even, a blue pen, a red pen, blue, black, whatever. But literally write and ask your higher self a question. What if you have a challenge with something? Say if you have a challenge in your business. Say if you're really stumped about something with your marketing or your messaging. Ask your higher self and then see what comes through. And when you set the logical brain aside and just write from that place, you'll be amazed what comes up. And then the last part is to notice. Because this doesn't begin and end with when you're writing and journaling. That's just the start. Notice what starts to show up. As you go through your day, as you go through your week, notice who reaches out to connect with you. Notice around your world what you see. Because when you really slow down and start to pay attention, you'll be amazed what shows up. The connections that you'll make, the signs that you'll see. You'll start to notice what's called synchronicities, things just happening and falling into place. And slowing down is the key. Slowing down is the key because literally the only way to speed up is to slow down. When we're trapped in this constant state of doing, motion, oh God, I have to do this and that, we don't notice anything. There's so many opportunities that surround us. So many opportunities. There's so many connections that surround us. So many people we can talk to. So many things going on that when we slow down, it's the only way that we can see them. So that's the real thing here is, this really has to be done from that place of presence and slowing down. So one other thing that I want to talk about today is detachment. And there's a quote that I want to share with you from a book. I mean, I'm not sure if I'd even call it a book because it's a very small writing, but it's one of the most profoundly incredible things I've ever read in my life. And it's called Verses on the Faith Mind by the Third Zen Patriarch. And if you read anything, read this, because this is the secret to everything. It's about everything and one thing. And the quote is, "The great way is not difficult for those not attached to preferences. If you wish to know the truth, hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind." Now, I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about just this quote alone. But the essence of this is it's teaching us about expectations and attachments. Expectations and attachments. And what this means is, you know, anytime that we're attached to a given outcome, and, you know, anytime that we go into anything with a certain expectation, that carries a lot of energy. And it can set us up for a lot of suffering. And this is for anything in life. You know, in the context of business, you know, let's take clients. You know, say if we go into a sales conversation with a strong expectation and an attachment that this person signs up, this person becomes our client, that carries an energy into that conversation. What if they don't sign up? Then we'll be really disappointed. You know, we'll go through all this, you know, we'll suffer, we'll, you know. But what if we were to go into that conversation from a place of detachment? What if we were to go into that conversation without any expectation that they become a client? What would be different? Well, one of the things that would be different is our energy would be different. Because the thing is, if we show up from a place of expectation and attachment, that carries a lower level frequency, that carries a certain tension that we might not even notice ourselves, but the person we're talking to will pick up on those cues, maybe even subconsciously. You know, it shows up in the way we talk, what we talk about with the person. But if we show up from a place of detachment, we show up from a place of curiosity, not of need. It's a very different energy. You know, and this translates to a lot of things, you know, and the power in this is, you know, that correlates to expansion and contraction. You know, when we show up from, you know, we want a certain outcome, we need this outcome, that's a very contractive, restrictive energy. Like, you know, even talking about it feels restrictive, doesn't it? But when we talk about, oh, well, you know, let's show up from curiosity. Let's see what happens. I'm really curious about this person. You know, I mean, I don't know if they'll become a client or not, but I'm really curious to talk to them. They seem pretty cool. It's a very different energy. And the thing is, when you show up from that energy, that's how clients are created. That's how things happen. That's where abundance lives. You know, because we're not trying to control it. So it's really about moving from, you know, like we talked about, attachment to detachment. So attachment is the realm of control. We're trying to control everything. We're like, oh my God, you know, I need that outcome. You know, I've got to sign up that client. I've got to, you know, do this and that. But detachment is letting go. Letting go. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's aligned, it's aligned. Attachment is about force, you know, making something happen. But detachment is about flow. It's about allowing it to happen. Attachment is about logical action. Thinking about it, often overthinking about it, analyzing it from every angle. But detachment is about intuitive action. It's about following those feelings like we talked about earlier. What feels right? I mean, how would your business look differently if you operated from a place of intuitive action versus logical action? Attachment is about what others want. And detachment is about what you love. Now, what this means is, say if you're like a coach or a consultant or any, service provider, what others want could be, you might look outside of yourself and say, oh, it seems my clients need a program on XYZ. But that might not really resonate with you. Because when you're creating something that's external from you, when you see that thing that, you perceive your clients want, and you start to create it, it's going to be forced, it's going to be controlled. But when you look within and think about, well, what do I love? Like, what do I love talking about? Like, what would I love to create? What program do I wish I had? Based on where I am now and where I was. What would be fun for me to create? When you create from that place, it's a place of flow. And like we looked at earlier, that idea of separateness and unification. When we're in that state of separateness, our clients are separate from us. They're over there, I'm over here. I've got to, sing and dance to get them to sign up with me. I've got to, impress them. I've got to create a program that they're going to love. But that state of unification, that expansive energy, it's that oneness. Our clients are us. We are a mirror of our clients. When we show up in our essence, in our truth, we attract other people that resonate with that truth. We attract other people vibrating at that same frequency. We attract other people that see themselves in our story. So when you create from what you love, that's who you're creating for. Those people, so much more aligned. Attachment is the domain of shoulds, and detachment is the domain of coulds. I mean, where a lot of people, struggle with this is, they hear about ways they can build a business and everything, maybe, certain coaches or whatever say, oh, this is what you should be doing to do that, blah, blah, blah. But what if it doesn't feel aligned? It's not going to feel right, and it's not going to resonate in the marketplace. It's not going to attract who you genuinely want to work with because it's not aligned. But the could is what aligns. Well, what would you really like to do? What could you do? It's that realm of creativity, not being told what to do that works for others, because what works for others is not going to work for you. We're all incredibly unique people. And attachment is obsession. When we have a goal, when we have a vision, we're like so engrossed in making that happen. Come hell or high water, like that's got to happen. It's got to happen. By the end of this year, I want this to happen. It's being so focused on that, from that place of control and restriction that it invites resistance, and then nothing happens. But when we operate from detachment, we're not obsessed with the goal or the vision. We're devoted to the goal or the vision. It's a very different energy. Very different energy, because when we're devoted to it, it's from a place of service. We're not attached to how or when. We're devoted to it, and we show up in service to that vision. Not, obsessing, trying to control it, by this certain date. So, to sum up, the common thread here is just letting go and letting it flow, and really stepping into that place of, trusting the inner guidance. you know, and following what resonates with you energetically. Because when you follow what resonates with you energetically, everything changes. The right people show up. But when you're doing something that doesn't align with you, it's going to be forced, and it's going to exhaust you, because the amount of energy you're putting out is just so much more. You know, this takes a lot of energy. This does not. So we kind of started talking about this here a little bit. You know, it begins with having a clear vision. But the secret lies in letting go of the how and the when. Now, this is something I have seen over and over in my life, especially with my first business when I was so, you know, in that mode of doing and forcing, and you know, I was like, oh my God, this has to happen by the state, and you know, and just trying to make things happen. And one thing that I'm a big fan of too is vision boards. In having a vision board with very, being very clear on the vision that you want to create. And this is actually how I really learned this lesson, was the specificity of the vision board is key. So, like, God, it was probably 15 years ago in Boston. So I had a very clear, very clear goals on my board. You know, like I said, you know, I want to make like, $300,000 a year. I want to live at the Ritz-Carlton residences. I want to be driving this car. I mean, it was super specific. And at the time I was like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do this. You know, and then I started getting even more specific about what date that I wanted to happen, what I wanted this money to come from, you know, what type of products and services. And it just felt so exhausting. And nothing was really working. So then what I did was I changed the vision board around, and I changed my goals, kind of. And I kind of said, well, all right, you know, this is what I want. You know what? I don't care how it happens. I just want this to happen. So then I had like the income goal. Then I had where I wanted to live. The car, that's it. That's all I had. You know, and I took off all the stuff about, oh, it's going to be like this many clients, you know, this type of service. I let go of all that. And then I just focused on what I wanted to create. I let go of the how and the when. And then I really saw myself living that state. You know, I saw myself making that money. I saw myself enjoying that money. You know, I saw myself living in that place. And then, you know, I kind of, like didn't lose touch with the vision board, but I kind of like, wasn't focused on it so much for a while. And then like about 4 years later, all of that happened. I was making way more money than I had on that vision board, and I was living where I wanted to live. You know, but what I did was I let go of the how and the when. And that's a really important thing, because when we're so focused on a particular how, like, say if we have a consulting practice or a coaching practice and we have a certain program for a certain ideal client, and we're like, okay, I want to make, 15K per month off of this program. That's being very attached to a how and when. But what if you just put the bigger goals on there? Because you know what? Maybe there's a way that you're meant to serve people a lot more powerfully than you are right now. Maybe there's things you haven't even considered. And that leads me to be open to opportunities that unfold. Be open. Don't be so rigid with, what you're doing now. Be open to what presents itself, even if it's new and uncomfortable. Because what you say yes to, if it's energetically aligned, can open up a whole new world. Because change is the opportunity for creation. So much can happen that you haven't even considered yet. And one thing that I like to say is creation is a synchronized dance with the universe. And what that means is that when we're creating, the universe is really creating through us. We're in this synchronized dance. We're in a place of alignment where things are just happening. You know, because of the energy that we're putting out there. We're so aligned. We're in service to our vision. We're in service to the cause that we want to create in this world, that things just happen. And it's really about shifting from a place of I want to a place of I am. Now, what this means is, you know, kind of like I touched on earlier with vision. You know, when we have a very clear vision of what we want to create, when we have a very clear vision on the impact that we want to make in the world, the ripples that we want to create, rather than focusing on I want that, what if you were to focus on I am that? What if you were to step into that powerful version of yourself that you see in that vision and bring that energy into the present moment? What if you were to show up as that person today? How would that person be showing up? What would you be doing differently in your business, in your life? Who would you be talking to? Would you be talking to different people than you are? What would be different? But operating from that place of I am is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly powerful because it brings that energy into the present moment, and you begin to embody that energy. You begin to embody that vision. And the other thing I want to touch on too is about luck. You know, while lots of people, you know, it's like, oh, well, they're so lucky, you know, and oh God, you know, they always have things working out. There's really no such thing. Luck is alignment. That's what luck is. And you have the power to create your own luck. Because the thing is, when you see things happening for other people, you know, like you know, they're growing a great business, you know, I mean, they're just like things are like, I mean, and you've probably felt it too, times in life where just things were just happening, you know, and it's flowing. That's because you're aligned. You're aligned inside, you're inside and aligned without. You're, you know, in alignment with your truth, in alignment with your purpose, in alignment with how you're showing up. You're showing up in your highest self and greatest power. That's what creates luck. Luck is alignment, because when we're in alignment, when we're taking inspired action from that place, the universe has our back. It meets us halfway. So we can create our own luck. And the last thing that I want to say is, you know, to always remember that the energy from which we operate is the energy which we create. The energy from which we operate is the energy which we create. This is so powerful. And if you only take away one thing, take away this. Because the energy that you're operating from, the energy that you're showing up from, is the energy that you're going to attract. The energy you're operating from is what you're going to create more of. If you're operating from a place of scarcity and fear and, you know, lack, you're going to create more and more and more and more of that. But if you flip the switch, if you pause in the moment, recognize the energetic state you're in, and make a conscious decision to switch that and say, enough, okay, I've had enough time to, be in that place, begin with gratitude, step into curiosity. Gratitude and curiosity, those are the gateways to abundance. If you can just be grateful for one thing, it begins to slowly shift the energy. So when you're able to shift into a higher state, a state of, abundance, a state of flow, a state of creation, that's what you'll create more of. Like attracts like. You know, the same energy gravitates towards the same energy. You know, so it's very powerful, because the thing is, and you know, when we're in a lower level state, which we all fall down into that, I mean, we're human beings, of course, you know, but people that have done the inner work, the difference is you're able to recognize it quick, and you're able to shift out of it a lot quicker. It's all about self-awareness, but if you're not aware of it, you get. I mean, there's so many people in the world that are just trapped in that place, and they can't get out of it because they're not aware. You know, so you know, it begins with self-awareness and making the conscious decision. And when you consciously decide to be in that expansive state, you know, some days it takes work, some days it's hard. You know, but deciding, even, you know, intending to get there shifts the energy. So yeah, so that's the last thing I wanted to touch on. So we've got a little bit more time. So wanted to ask if there's any questions, because we probably have a little time for Q&A.
Yeah. If you have a question, you could raise your hand, use the reaction, or literally raise your hand. So, you know, I have a question, Justin. You know,
Yeah.
one of the things that makes this sometimes hard, a lot of this mindset, is because I think all of us are overcoming or becoming more aware of all the programming, you know, of everything we've been taught growing up. And some of that is very, you know, in the mind and not unless spiritual. It's, you know, do this is good, and, you know, don't do this because that's bad. And it's kind of normal things that, you know, parenting. So we have to overcome those things and trust ourselves more.
Yeah.
Guess
Yeah,
that's not-
and you know, that again really begins with self-awareness, you know, and you know, and also working, you know, with guides and teachers as well. You know, because sometimes the thing is we can't see these things ourselves sometimes. And you know, I certainly had that experience on my own journey. You know, I mean, you know, there's so many layers to this, and each layer that you peel back reveals another layer. You know? And it's a lifelong journey. You know, and that's the thing too, is knowing that the journey is ultimately the journey is really the destination. You know, it's a lifelong journey of growth.
Yeah. Thank you. Shay?
Two things, just because I thought about it in my head as you were talking. One, I wanted to say thank you for the presentation. It was awesome, Justin. Thank you so much. One of the things I was thinking that I should share is you were talking about having a conversation with your higher self. And one of the things I do is I'm really big into astrology. And so I've memorized all of my 12 astrology signs that are in my chart. And so I have like a round table in my head of every sign that I am. And I've learned how they communicate and how they think within myself. And I have conversation, and I have like 13 of me sitting there in my brain going, okay, should I go and do this? And there's a part of me that's like, no, that's silly. That's not going to work. And then there's the other part of me that's like, oh my God, I can't wait to run. And so instead of me literally writing it down, because that's just not my style, I have that intense conversation with all of the energies that I feel flow around me to make decisions, to make sure that I'm aligned with myself, to make sure that I'm ready to go and meet people and do an advertisement, and how is that supposed to be designed? And so because I'm more imaginative and third eye person and physically writing things down, that's another way that I do it. I have like my Knights of Round Council of the Shades. So I wanted to share that.
That's awesome.
In it.
Yeah, and what I love about what you've said is, you've created your own process and you've created your own container for this. And that's what's cool is, because the way each of us does this looks very differently. And it's about finding that channel, finding that way that works best for you. Like mine is writing, that's how and art too, I find that, art making is a really cool way to, to connect with source. But with writing, like I do all of my business writing from that higher self voice. Like I wrote my entire website from my higher self. Like I set the brain aside, and write it from that place. And when you start to do business activities from that place, it's amazing changes.
Thank you. Raquel.
Thank you, Justin, for spending your time with us and sharing your knowledge and experience. I greatly appreciate it, particularly for me today as I'm heading out on my journey of today, which is a profound one. It occurs to me, though, that juxtaposed with our higher self is our lower self, and that the two are intertwined in that very question of mind and body. And as I go on that journey internally, peeling back those layers, I am still trying to find the things that I internalized versus the things that are innately, uniquely who I am. And sometimes for some of us, it can be not a very straightforward. There's so much that is intertwined and layered, and so much where it's not a linear path, but there's all these splinters of ourselves in that process of becoming. We are both becoming higher and lower, all those things together.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and what you say resonates so much, because it's the furthest thing from a path that's linear. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, we go up, we go down, and the journey can be a rough one, because I mean, you're peeling back layers, you're exploring things in the depths of your soul, But one thing I heard you say is about, identifying those things that are truly you and not. It's always a question of alignment and, energetic essence, and what feels most aligned, because as we go through, the human experience, we take on different identities sometimes, masks we'll put on, and that's a big part of, the return to our truth is removing those masks, those identities, those personas that would show up in different environments with symptoms, that's a big part of it. And, the other thing is, letting go of stuff that happened. In yoga, there's a concept of what's called a samskara. So that's when, something happens externally from us that triggers us, like it causes us to, be like, oh, I don't like that, like if someone did something bad to us or whatever, and then that energy gets trapped inside of us and it gets coiled up, and because we didn't let it flow through, and that's part of the work too, is, getting all that stuff cleared out of there. There's so many layers,
The last thing I will say is that what I have found myself doing, I started this about a year ago, was to ask myself, and I say my name even as I ask myself, Raquel, what do you know? So whenever I'm confused or I'm not really sure about something, and whenever I'm in that place of distress and angst, I simply ask, Raquel, what do you know? And that helps to calm me to begin that further journey that I need to take.
Thank you. So, thank you, everyone. This is Justin. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I will, I'm going to send Justin's everyone's contact information. His email is jc@justinclapp.com. So any of you can contact him. If you want the recording, let me know. This was wonderful. I mean, this really was an amazing hour and a half. And one of the benefits and the things that I love about it, and I hope you do too, is sharing this experience together. And I almost feel kind of the energy of each of us, projecting through this Zoom environment. So thank you, Justin.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Okay,
thank you,
Bo.
Jonathan.
Sure.
Have a good day, everyone.
care.
Everyone. Okay. Bye-bye. Justin, let me
Yeah.
stop the recording. Let me stop.